Abyssal Murmurs. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the next horror stories. Story 1, Dreams. When I was young, I never cared about dreams or its interpretation. However, everything changed when my mom started to age. The first incident that made me believe in dreams was when I was 28 years old. My mom wanted to go visit my sister in Des Moines. The day before we were scheduled to leave for Des Moines, I dreamed that my mom and I were on a journey to visit relatives. However, the path was very rocky and steep. I was having a hard time going down the path, but my mom was hopping from rock to rock like it was nothing. As we approached our relative's village, I tripped on a rock and my right leg was bleeding. I woke up with a heavy heart, a feeling that I could not explain, but just know that something bad was going to happen. I told my mom about my dream and asked to postpone the trip. She agreed and called my sister to tell her that we are not coming. However, my sister insisted that we visit her because she have already took off vacation to spend time with us. As a result, my mom decided to visit my sister as planned. Before bed, she burned some incense and asked my deceased father to protect us as we traveled to Des Moines. The next morning, as we were about to depart, my sister called and asked me to bring my dog, Bella, half Pomeranian and half Chihuahua. She indicated that she wanted to meet Bella for the first time. I thought the request was odd, but figure I could use a distraction as my sister lives on a farm. So, I pack up Bella's thing and we make the 8-hour drive to Des Moines. When we arrived, we were greeted by my sister and her husband. As my brother-in-law was unloading our luggage from the trunk of my car, he made a comment about my dream and was laughing about it. He said, "Yeah, your sister told me about your dream and said that you almost canceled the trip because you are afraid. You have nothing to worry about. In the Hmong culture, when you dream that one of your leg is hurt in some way, it's actually the person next to you who is going to get hurt, not you." I gave him the "you're not helping" stare and walked away. That night, my mom slept in the living room and Bella and I slept in the basement. Around 7:30, Bella, I scratched me and ran upstairs to where my mom was sleeping and started barking. I followed Bella up the stair and found my mom pale and unresponsive. I called 911 and started CPR on her while calling out for my sister to wake up. We spent the next 2 days at the hospital and found out that my mom have a heart condition that requires her to be oxygen when she sleeps. The doctor told me that if I didn't find her in time, she would have died. The second time was when I was 31 years old. I dreamed that my mom died. At the funeral, she was in a coffin dressed in Hmong clothes with a tishu laos and cow noog, pointy shoes. As my brother was doing a ceremony to guide her to the afterlife, she woke up from the coffin. I was so scared. I woke up in sweats and have to turn all the lights in my bedroom on. 2 days later, I received a call from my brother that my mom was unresponsive and they were on their way to the hospital in an ambulance. I rushed out of work and drove to the hospital. I live in a different town and commute to work, so from my workplace to the hospital was about 2-hour drive. Halfway there, my brother called and said the doctor wants to speak to me. My mom have a do not resuscitate order, however my brother and I are her power of attorney. The doctor needs to act quickly and wants to know our decision. My mom had a minor stroke, and with her heart condition, her only chance of surviving is life support. My brother was crying and said he couldn't make a decision. So I told the doctor to put her on life support and said I will deal with her later when she wakes up, if she wakes up for going against her wish. After a week in the ICU, my mom was slowly recovering and was moved to a rehabilitation room. The third time was last year, 2018. I dreamed that my mom was dressed in this beautiful white dress and packing her suitcase. She looks happy and told me she was going home to see my dad and her relatives. I asked if I could go with her and she said no. She told me to stay home and cook for her son-in-law, my husband. She worried that he will be hungry if I go with her. As she finished packing her suitcase, I drop her off at a seaport. I watch her leave as she board a ship and wave goodbye. She looks really happy, like someone who was about to embark on a journey of their time. When I woke up, my heart was beating fast and I was overwhelmed by emotions. I called my mom to check on her and she said she was fine. She was in the middle of breakfast and listening to her hum radio. I felt some relief and went on about my day. A couple of days later, my brother and I, along with our partners, were in Chicago for a weekend getaway. The second day into our trip, my little nephew called and said Grandma was unresponsive. He doesn't know what to do. I told him to put Grandma's oxygen on her and call 911. When we arrived 4 hours later at the hospital, the doctor said my mom is not in pain, but her heart is really weak and her lungs are not working properly. She cannot breathe on her own, and they cannot operate on her because of her age and health condition. 4 days later, my mom passed away and started her journey home peacefully. Now, a day, I take my dreams seriously. I don't know if it is our subconscious or a message from beyond. All I know is that these experiences are real, and no one will truly understand until they themselves have experienced it. Story 2, Mystical Story. When I was younger, I used to experience a lot of paranormal activity, but I think that the one I'm about to tell really takes the cake. It happened 2 weeks after moving into my new house in Fresno. My mom is a registered nurse who worked night shifts, leaving my 3 sisters and I alone during the nights. We were always scared during the night, so they'd all come sleep in my room with me. We'd lock the doors and just slept through the night. One night as we were sleeping, I suddenly heard a door slam shut from the other room. I was scared shitless, but being the eldest there, I was pretending that it was just the wind so I wouldn't freak anyone out. An hour later, as everyone fell asleep, I swear on my life that what I saw was so horrific. It scares me to think about it till this day. Note that my door is a glass door. I heard a noise from outside my room, almost as if bones were cracking, and as I peeked from under my blanket, I saw what looked like a naked girl crawling around backwards. She was on all fours, but her stomach was faced up towards the ceiling and back face down. She moved with such fast motions, but she suddenly just froze at my door. I was so scared. I froze there, not knowing if she was going to come at the door or if she was going to leave. But I was scared, frozen, crying, and had no idea what to do. I closed my eyes, praying to God to help us and to keep my siblings safe. All of a sudden, she was gone. I felt a sense of relief, but I was still scared to death. I looked up to the ceiling and saw a shadow that was the shape of a young boy with horns. Also, it's nighttime, so I had no idea why there was even a shadow. I was confused to what it was. But every time I moved, the shadow moved as well. So I got the courage to turn on the lights, and it was gone. I went to wake up my siblings so that I could have the comfort of someone being awake with me. I never told them what happened because I didn't want them freaking out. But it never happened again, and I'm also not sure if it was a dream or not. But to my knowledge, I believe that I was awake. Whelpses, that's my story. Scariest event in my life. Story 3. The Final Walk, a caregiver's chilling encounter. I work as an in-home caregiver for a 90-year-old lady who lives alone. The way her apartment is set up is, you walk in and see the door to her bedroom. To your immediate left is a small open kitchen and a wide living room. To the far left of the kitchen is the bathroom. One night, I was on night duty, and I usually just hang out and take on and off naps. Around 4 a.m., she walked out of her room with her walker. I greeted her and walked with her across the kitchen to the bathroom. While she was in the bathroom, I walked back to the kitchen and washed my hands. As I turned, I saw her in bed. There was no way she made it there within the span of 15 seconds, and all tucked in. Even if she was running, I'd hear her, because she has to pass behind me before making it to her room. She is 90 years old, and she cannot run. I freaked out and looked at the bathroom lights. They were off, so I went into her room and jokingly said, "Geez, you are fast." But she was dead. I mentally freaked out, grabbed my bag, and headed down to the lobby and called 911. I refused to go back until the medics came, and even then, I refused to look at her. Later, I was told she had died in her sleep several hours earlier. Story 4. Long-distance relationship. I heard this short story about 15 years ago. I will share with you of what I remembered. There was a couple who were dating. The girl lived in Minnesota, and the boy lived in California. The boy would travel to Minnesota to visit with the girl and hang out. One day, there was a knock on the girl's front door. When the girl opened the door, she discovered her long-distance boyfriend was there to visit her. The girl was thrilled. She invited him into her house and then led him into the living room. They sat on a couch together and talked for a while. There was a house phone next to the girl. As they were talking, the house phone rang. The girl turned around to pick up the phone. As a result, her back is now towards her boyfriend. She was surprised that her boyfriend's mother called her when she answered the phone. Her boyfriend's mother broke the sad news to the girl that the girl's boyfriend had recently died in a car accident. Confused, the girl responded, "But he is sitting here next to me." As she said those words, she turned around to grab her boyfriend, but only grabbed thin air. There was no one there. The girl realized that she was alone in the living room. Then, she started to get goosebumps. She became terrified. I don't remember what happened next. I believe the girl told her parents, so they did a shaman ritual to protect her. Story 5. Black Dress. This is a story about my girlfriend working at one of the hospitals in St. Paul. I'll tell it from her perspective. One day when I was working, I really needed to use the bathroom, but I didn't want to because the bathrooms were next to the morgue. Where dead patients go. My stomach was so bad. I said, "FK it." Here we go. I went into the bathroom, and I was the only one in the bathroom. At the time, I didn't see anyone around working on the same floor level as me. As I was using the bathroom, someone came into the bathroom. They walked into the stall, directly next to me, but here's the weird thing. They didn't use the bathroom or close the neighboring stall door next to me. They just turned their feet towards me and just stood there. The person was wearing a black dress, where they had the dress that goes to their ankles, and they were wearing black boots. This was strange, because only people who work here can be on the hospital floor I was on. Everyone who works here has to wear hospital scrubs. So I thought it was some pervert looking at me from the top of the stall. I looked up, and I saw nothing. The thing was just standing with their feet facing me. I got goosebumps, and I was terrified out of my mind. I texted my boyfriend that I was scared, but he didn't see my text yet. About 4 minutes goes by, and it feels like hours. I said, "F it. I'm leaving this shit." I quickly used the bathroom and left that bathroom as fast as possible. As I remember, when I was grabbing my belongings in my stall, Ye Thing was still standing there, never moved, never made a sound. I didn't care to look to see who was in the stall. Neighbor's stall door was still open because I was too scared. I'll never use that bathroom ever again. Story 6. Don't be mad at Hmong funerals. I was 16 years old, and at the time, I was flirting with a pretty girl from my school. One day, my parents told me to go to a Hmong funeral for a relative of mine's. I really didn't want to go because I wanted to spend that evening with that hot girl. During the funeral, everything was going well until she texted me that she just wanted to be friends. I got pissed. I went outside for fresh air, and to take my anger, I said out loud, "You friend-zoned me because I couldn't go on a date with you? That's so messed up." I spent the rest of the time at the funeral outside, just on my phone thinking about life and how mad I was. I finally went home to my grandma's house to stay there for the night. Sleeping in the living room, I remember precisely. I woke up exactly at 5 a.m. I didn't think nothing of it, so I went back to sleep with my back on the couch and both hands on my chest. I shut my eyes for 10 seconds and all of a sudden, I couldn't move. I then hear from the kitchen taping. Tap, 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 tap. Like something was slowly sneaking up to me from the kitchen. You know how Hmong people have those straw carpets. I forgot to spell it. Lay. When it reached the living room, I heard the footsteps of the thing stepping on the lay, getting close to me. It didn't sound like footsteps anymore. It sounded like crawling. I told myself, bet. Let me open my eyes right now and see how it looks like. I'm very glad to myself that I never had the courage to open my eyes during this, because I feel like I would be traumatized for life. I never opened my eyes, but as it got closer, I felt a ghostly hand. Felt like if someone put their hand 1 inch away from your face. Not touching, but you feel the force. The hand went to the side of my head. Then I felt gravity in front of my face. The world then turned static, and I heard a shaman chanting in front of my face. Almost like when the OG will do black magic. I fought for what seemed like hours. Was just 30 seconds of this. When I finally broke free, I got my blankets and slept in my grandma's room. The next morning, I told my grandma about the incident. My grandma then grabs a string and ties my hand. After her chanting, my grandma told me, a ghost girl saw that you were mad at something, so it followed you here to see you. Ever since then, I'm always on my best behavior at Hmong funerals. Story 7. Hide and seek tag in Wisconsin. Not my story. It's my cousin-in-law's story I heard when we were around the campfire. I'll tell it from his perspective. During high school, my friends and I were hanging out. We go to this one park with a big open field, with a few trees on the edge of the field. Connecting to the field is a forest. When it was night, we wanted to go play hide and seek tag in the dark. There was like 10 of us, so we voted one of my friends to be it. After that, we booked it down the field. It was a big open field, but I had a super smart idea and decided to climb and hide in one of the trees near the forest. No one will find me. I got in the tree and I saw the entire park field. It was beautiful, and I saw my friends running around. They were so far. I was sure to win this game. All of a sudden, I hear someone whispering, "Hey, hey, you." I froze. It was coming directly under the tree. You, in tree. I know you can hear me. I decided to ignore it and just act like I didn't hear anything. You. I see you up there. When you're in the dark for so long, your eyes start to adjust to the dark, and you start to see more. To the bottom of my eyes, I saw a guy dressed all in white, just poking his hands up towards me. I didn't want to look directly at it. It felt like hours, and it looks like my friends were getting farther and farther away from me. All of a sudden, the thing started to climb up the tree. I said hell no. As soon as the thing got to at least the middle of the tree, I jumped off and booked it to my friends as fast as possible. When I got to my friends, they were all worried and looking for me, because the game was already over. I told them where I was hiding and what had happened. When I looked back, the thing wasn't there anymore. We went home, and that was the last time I played hide and seek tag at night. Story 8. Drunk Ghost. My family used to own a liquor store. It's not too big, but it has a basement with a very long, narrow hallway with mirrors on the end of it and side of it. The hallway goes straight down to the bathroom and to a small office room with all the security cameras on the right. Note, the light switch to the entire basement hallway is at the bottom of the stairs. Important later on. One day, my dad was out of town and told me to go grab an envelope with important information in the office basement. I got off work, came to the liquor store, and there was only one employee working at the time. Let's call her Michelle. Michelle was sitting upstairs in the front cashier and gave me the key to go downstairs to the office. I go downstairs, down the narrow hallway, and go into the office and started looking. It has been about 2 minutes, and something didn't feel right, but I ignored it. But since I'm hung, I was like, better be safe, and just close the door behind me while I look. I wouldn't want anything sneaking up on me. As soon as I turn around to close the door, the entire hallway was pitched black behind me. I froze in confusion. I then looked at the security monitor on the office desk. I see Michelle just helping a customer at the front cashier. She couldn't have flipped the light switch on me that fast. I don't recall us having electric issues in the basement. Either it was like a movie. I stuck my head out to the hallway to look to my left, and then looked to my right. Saw nothing but pitched black. Shit. FK the envelope. I gotta get out of here. But the only way out is back that way. FK. Low. When I finally mustered out some courage, I turned on my phone flashlight and booked it down the hallway fast as hell. And I don't know why my family had mirrors in that hallway, but it made it even more creepy. When I got to the light switch, I turned on the lights and was scared shitless. I call my dad and tell him, "Hey, I can't find it, and I'm going home now." My dad did not like that, and he said for me to find it. I kept insisting that I couldn't find it. In reality, I just didn't want to go back down there, lol. But I already know he was going to complain to me all day. So I said, FK it. Let's go back down there, lol. I go back down there and spend the next 30 minutes looking for this stupid envelope. My dad then told me to record the basement office of me looking for it and send the recording to him, and he will tell me where the envelope is in the office. I did that, and we found the envelope. I went home. A couple of months later, I was cleaning my phone gallery photos and videos. I found the video of me looking for the envelope. I was curious and watched it again and got chills through my spine when I heard in the video someone whispering, "Hey, hey." Story 9. The Journey to a Sister's Farewell. A haunting encounter in the Leia wilderness. Before the war, back in Laos, in the time where there were still tigers and Pojin Tuksug, my mom's grandpa lived 1 night and 2 days' walk away from his sister. At the time when people were done with cutting and collecting all of their wheat from their farms, people sent news to my mom's grandpa that his long-distance sister had unfortunately passed away. He and a couple other family members, men, packed up and set out on that long journey to attend their sister's funeral. They would have to walk for a long while through the jungles and also sleep on the long journey. After a tiring 2 days' walk and a night's rest, they finally arrived at that village. They arrived early in the morning when the rooster had just crowed. The moment they entered the village, dogs started to bark like crazy. The village's dogs were viciously growling, face toward their direction. A couple brothers of the dead sister came out to greet them and led them into the house. Inside the house, the dead sister was dressed in her traditional Hun clothes, laying on top of the horse hanging on the wall. They cried, mourned, and took turns to go and embrace the dead sister one last time. While the families was embracing and crying, my mom's grandpa looked up at the dead sister and saw that she opened her eyes to stare at them. Slowly, people started to notice her eyes being wide open. They all got hella scared, but they couldn't say anything. They started to pinch each other, and they all just really wanted to run home. But out of respect for the family, they worked up the courage to stay. One of the elders turned toward her direction and said, "Daughter, you had already died, and we had traveled this far because we love you. Please, don't do that. You're embarrassing us. If you don't stop, we're going to go back home, and there won't be no one to see you off anymore." After those words, she finally closed her eyes and lied still again. After a day or so, they finally buried her. The grandpa and others decided to sleep for a night with the family to show respect and concern for the family's loss. They had already traveled so far, and they wanted to comfort the family. When night fell and the village got dark, they ate and went to bed. As they slept, they heard someone with light footsteps, like a little child climbing onto the roof. You know how those old Hong Lao's houses were made of sticks and hay. When she got to the roof, she jumped from side to side. They could hear it clearly. Lying under, they could hear the hay on top of the roof move. One of the blood brother yelled out, "You little bee, you're already dead. How dare you embarrass us, brothers and the guests? If you don't stop now, we will cut you from the family and not care about you anymore." Suddenly it went quiet, and everything was calm again. Then they heard a soft sobbing coming from the corner of the house outside. The house was only made of sticks, so they could hear it clearly. Through the cracks of the wall, and with the moonlight, they could see a dark shape like a little child sitting there. They couldn't sleep all night, listening to the soft cries that faded with the coming of morning. In the morning, they didn't dare to speak out loud, but only communicated with hand language. They were so damn scared. One of them said out loud, "I'm going to the bathroom." Another said, "I'm gonna go visit for a little bit." Another said, "I'm gonna go get water, etc., and so on. And that's how they all left to return home. Story 10. The Girl Who Loved Him. This is a story my dad told me long ago, and I just heard the rest of it recently. Before my dad married my mom, a girl and her family came to live in his village. She was absolutely beautiful, more beautiful than any man has ever seen. But somehow, my dad never felt sexually attracted to her. He treated her as a dear friend, even though he knew she was completely in love with him. One day, after she tried to offer herself to him, and he rejected her, she confessed that the reason they moved away from their old village was because the men in the village gang raped her. She thought my dad knew this, so she figured he thought she was disgusting. But my dad didn't know and told her it wasn't her fault, and he wasn't disgusted. He continued to be a good friend to her for a long time, until he met and married my mother. She was so heartbroken, but blessed his marriage. When he had his firstborn, she died of a disease. He didn't think much of it as he thought she finally had gone to a better place, until he saw her again. The first time was when he walked by her house to go to the farm. She was standing by her house, smiling at him like she used to. He thought he probably imagined it. The second time, he saw her walking down the road. Soon, she started showing up at his doorway even though she can't enter, smiling beautifully like she always had done. She came to his dream one night and said she just couldn't leave because she loved him so much. As long as she can see him, she's satisfied. So every day from there on, he saw her. She was always at his doorway, at the farm, at her house, or down the road. My dad told my mom, and they were Nije, but she still came. Since she wasn't exactly doing any harm, they gave up and allowed her to haunt them. She came to my mother's dream and told her that she was in love with her husband even before my mother married him. My mother begged her to leave him alone, but she said she would never hurt him and only wanted to see him. When the war broke out, they had to run away. My parents thought that they wouldn't be haunted by her anymore, but to their dismay, she followed them. At first, she stayed her distance, but then eventually walked right beside them. My dad believed that she protected them through their dangerous journey. The last time he saw her was when they crossed the Mekong River, where she was still on the other side crying. As they were waiting to come to the US, he had a dream about going back to the Mekong River. She was still at the other side, crying as she looked on. He tells her that he is leaving for another country without war, so his family would be safe. She then tells him that he should protect and love them as much as he could. She can no longer oversee and protect him as she couldn't leave. She will move on and pray that she may get the chance to love him in the next lifetime. He saw her turn around and disappear into the dark forest. He haven't seen her since. He told me that he felt extremely guilty about it. She loved him so much to the point of even watching over him after death. He felt like he could at least loved her when she was still alive. But that would be lying to himself and her as well. To this day, he still wondered if he made the right decision whenever he thought of her. Story 11. When Path Crosses. I got a request to share my experiences, so I will share an experience I had when I was in Afghanistan. I won't give too much detail as to what I do and the location. Before I start, please excuse my writing. I am not good at writing. I was deployed to AFOB in Afghanistan. It's a pretty scary area because there was a lot of enemies. This FOB has been opened and closed a couple of times. Lots of soldiers have died there. The FOB consists of two areas, the current base and the old base. The old base has been blocked off by walls, and the only entrance was a gate. The old base had multiple firefights and deaths over the courses of the war. We called the old base the Ghost Yard because the tower that oversees it always reported they kept hearing cries, screaming, and dark figures that the NVG and camera won't see. Even though it was not my MOS, I was tasked to observe, operate, and maintain multiple security cameras, even when I had never been properly trained on it. The only reason it became my duties was because I was tech savvy. Eventually, I was able to figure out on my own. It can be a stressful job when the safety of everyone is on your shoulders. One night, properly, 2 to 3 a.m., I was woken up to go fix the camera because we lost feed. I grabbed my rifle and knife and had to walk across to the other side of the FOB. The camera is about 700 meters away, almost half a mile. As I am walking, I did not use any lighting and relied on the lights from the stars and moon. Give or take, I properly can see about 30 to 50 feet and can barely make out the surroundings area. The reason you don't want lights is because you don't want to get sniped by the enemies. I knew the FOB so well that I created a mental image map in my head. I decided to take the same path that I always have. Eventually, the path leads to an open field that I will have to cross to get to the camera, which is next to the wall that blocks the ghost yard. The field is also the same field you would cross to get to the entrance of the ghost yard. I thought the night was going to be the same as any other night. I was dead wrong. I would cross path with the spirit/dead. As I walked into the open field and walked a couple more meters, I felt a chill. At the corner of my view, I saw a figure. I turn and look. As far as I can see in the dark, I saw someone in a soldier uniform sitting on the ground, legs out. Thinking it was one of our guys, I greeted him. "What's up, man?" I don't remember if I took some steps towards it, but my body just went into flight or fight mood, and I got freaked out. I quickly pointed my rifle and froze in place. As I was staring at the person, the moonlight was just bright enough for me to see their face. Their face was pale and dry up like a person that has been dead for a long time. The ghost was reaching one of its arms out. I think it said something because its mouth was moving, but I'm not sure. I can't even believe what I am seeing. As a soldier, when you see enough death, you kind of become numb to it. So much stuff was going through my head. What crossed my mind the most was, how am I supposed to react to this? Do I shoot it? Run as fast as possible? What do? I do remembered I was gripping my rifle. Palm became sweating and eyes focus. I remember the OG always tells story of how people would cross paths with the dead and always use a line. So I decided to use the line. The lines was something like, I am the living and you're the ghost/dead. Living have our own path, and the dead have its own path. The living and dead will walk their own path and never block each other. After that, I slowly backed out and walked away, not turning my back until the ghost completely disappeared in the dark. I was so freaked out, but I didn't have time to care about what I had just experienced because I have other important things to do. As I was fixing the camera, I had to keep checking my surroundings. After fixing the cameras, I took a different route back. I waited for a few days before telling the other soldiers. Once in a while, I would experience some more supernatural stuff throughout my deployment. Story 12. The Unwanted Guest, a haunting that refused to let go. To those who wanted to know what happened afterwards, refer back to the story of my mother getting her hair pulled by the ghost. My dad was taken back. He burned incense and asked the house spirits to protect the family. He then went to work. It was a good 2 to 3 months of peace because the stench of peppers was on the walls of the house. I shared a bedroom with 4 of my siblings. At that time, we had bunks. One night, I was awoken to my brother yelling, "Get the FK off of me!" literally waking up the whole family. I remembered looking at the time and it being 2:43 am. My dad asks my brother what happened, and my brother says in Hmong, some tiger bite wants to sit on me and scare me. I saw its face. He then asks what he saw, and my brother says it was a female with a red dot on her forehead, smiling with a wicked smile. A week later, My dad asked a shaman to look into it. He stated that there is something here, but he doesn't know why or who it is. While the shaman was jumping, he told us that he managed to locate it. A woman of native Indian heritage. She stated she likes my father and wants them to be together, but my mom and the house spirits are in the way. The shaman obviously tells her they can't be together, and we burn Joss money, incense, and give her a chicken and a small cardboard house. We then took that box and transported it somewhere far away. All was well for a long while after that. My 3-odd eldest brother got married and had a S.I.L. to help my mom with her pain. Here is where we then drew the line with this being. As a few months went by, somehow she found her way back. And who did she sit on this time? You guessed it. The U.S.I.L. got sat on by this being, and not only was S.I.L. sleep paralyzed, but she also heard it talking to her, insulting about her beauty and looks. After a while, it went away. My S.I.L. told my brother what happened, and then told my dad. Now my dad is convinced there is something that is harming the family, and decided to ask the family to help pool together money and move out. Best move ever, but it was tricky. We all could not mention anything about moving. We would say, take this and go fix it. And every time we would go to Home Depot or go anywhere from that place, we have to say that person's name. It was strictly forbidden for us to say we or in Humpeb. Finally, the last things needed to be fixed are loaded, and as my brothers and I are pulling out from the driveway and drove off, I took one last glimpse of that house. I saw shivered me to the core. In the space between the window curtains and a little lower, I see a shimmering, floating red stone. It made me had flashback to my brother's sleep paralysis experience. He did saw the red dot on forehead. She was watching us leave. Story 13. The Forgotten Spirit. A haunting in the home apartment. This is one of my ghost encounter moments, and I'd like to share it with the community. One day I was tasked a job by my mom to babysit my baby sister, who is 18 months. 1 year and 6 months, I was 17. My mom worked second shift, so she'd be gone by around 2 p.m. and wouldn't get back home till 11:12 at night. Around 3 in the evening, I put on my baby sister's favorite nursery rhymes, and she'd sit there all day on the couch eating her bottle and watching it. I laid next to her. About an hour passed, and my sister fell asleep. Her nap times are usually 4 to 5:30. As I noticed she fell asleep, I decided, hey, why not get some rest too? I laid down and closed my eyes. As I was resting, not about 30 minutes passed by. I smelled something awful, like old, rotten meat. Then suddenly it felt cold and chilly.
I then suddenly felt a cold hand slightly caress my hair to my face.
I woke up thinking it was my baby sister trying to get my attention, because she usually does after her naps. But when I looked, she was still asleep and snuggled up. I thought, oh, that's weird, but I shook it off anyways. I then laid back down and tried to rest up again. As I was slowly falling back asleep, I felt something grab my foot. I jumped up quickly to find out there was nobody there. I was shook, so I stayed up and put on my show, Supernatural, to watch. Nothing happened then. Approximately around 7, my sister woke up. She slept more than her usual nap time, but that's okay. So I undressed her, changed her diaper, and gave her a warm bath. After the warm bath, I got her dressed and was making dinner for both of us. When I cook, I like to have music on, so I had my speaker and music on. My little sister was sitting on her little stool. As I turned back to check up on my little sister, she had this frown and scared look on her face. I was thinking that was unusual for my sister to do, knowing she was playful and joyful all the time. I went up to her and said, "Hey, what's wrong? Brother's here." She still had that frown and scared face on her. Suddenly, the room got cold. It was not likely for the room to get cold because I was cooking and all the windows were shut. The AC was off. I then felt something strange and noticed my little sister pointing at me. I then moved to the side and her tiny finger remained in the same spot as where I was just standing. Then she started crying. As an older brother, I wasn't supposed to be scared, but deep down, I was ready to pee myself. Leo. I picked her up. The strange thing was, my baby sister likes to be held where her head rests on my shoulders. When I picked her up, she didn't want to be held like that anymore, as if she kept seeing something behind me. She tucked her head into my chest and remained still. I was scared shitless, so I called my mom and told her what has been happening. She said, "Keep all the lights on and make sure the lights are on downstairs because I'm coming home right now." Hint, we lived in a ghetto Hummel apartment, so there were 2 stories, 2 units downstairs and 2 units upstairs. We lived upstairs in Unit 4. As my mom made sure I had the lights on downstairs, I went to check with my baby sister still in my arms. I flicked the light switch and opened the door to see if the lights were on, and they sure were on. As I was about to close the door, I saw an old Humlong lady in home clothes sitting on the stairs that lead up to our floor. When I saw her, my music stopped playing, and it almost sounded like she was laughing with a sob to it. I got so freaked out, I closed the door and double-locked it. I turned off the stove immediately and went to the living room. I called my mom and told her to be careful, knowing that there's an old lady sitting on the stairs laughing. My mom said she was close, and for me to pack diapers and a bottle for my baby sister, 'cause we're going to my Poja's house. And my Poj is a shaman Bichu. Anyways, about 5 minutes passed from the 2-end phone call I made to my mom, and she calls me back. She said, "Hey, I'm outside." Freaked out and ready to dip, I grabbed my baby sister, but then the diaper bag was suddenly gone. I said, "Forget it," so I walked towards the door with my sister. Then all of a sudden, one of the doors to the room slowly creaks open. Knowing they're all shut, I quickly got out of the apartment and buckled my sister in her car seat and got myself in. I told my mom everything again from the point where I rested to now. My mom said that she too has been experiencing things. Like a few examples she gave me was that when she slept in the living room, she also felt cold and heard someone calling her name, Hub. When she would check, no one would be there. Or she would dream that someone would knock on the door, exactly 3 knocks. When she went to check, there was a lady with her hair down and would be by the stairs just standing there. As we arrived to my Pog's paternal grandmother's house, my mom told her everything and said we should go back. She would figure out what was going on. When we got back home, we walked up the stairs. We were all ahead of my Pog, and I decided to look back. As I looked back, I saw that my Pog was looking at Unit 2, which was downstairs by the apartment basement. My Pog then proceeded to ask questions like, "Who are you? Why do you keep bothering my daughter-in-law and her kids? What do you want?" My mom and my baby sister went ahead first and went inside. I stayed back with my Pog, just in case. After about 3 to 4 minutes of my Pog talking to the ghost, we headed on up to my unit. We all sat down, and she told the ghost's story. She said that the old lady that kept bothering us was a lady that lived in one of those abandoned units downstairs, but died a few years back because of old age and depression. She was sad because her kids abandoned her, never came to check up on her, and her husband moved back to Laos and got remarried to another woman behind her back. My pog said that the reason why she kept bothering me and my baby sister was that I reminded her of her eldest son named Fong, on how he would take care of his little sister Sheng too. After knowing who the ghost was and what her story was, my pog said for us to burn the ghost some money and ask her nicely to leave us alone to find peace. We did that the very next day, and ever since, we've never had any trouble like that again. Story 14. The Greystone Place, Sacramento. Car on Franklin. Okay, the scariest apartments ever. Every home kid's worst nightmare started at these apartments in Sacramento, California. This apartment was full of Asians, and mostly Hmong that were just coming to America in the early 1990s. The apartment used to be blue and had little taste in looks. It was old, and people called it the ghetto. Now it's been remodeled, and I don't know if there are still Hmong people living there. When I was a kid during the 90s, I had lots of cousins living there at Greystones. Almost every weekend, there were jingle bells here. As kids, you made friends with all the other kids, even if you didn't live at the apartments too. Well, the ghost/superstitious part of the story I'm gonna tell are just rumors. But the event of murder case is real. You'll get it once you read the story. At Greystones, like average home kids there would often play hide and go seek cops and robbers, or tag. One day, a group of kids were playing tag. There was this tall, dead grass meadow. The other side of the apartments was separated by the apartment's black fence. On the other side of the meadow are some ghetto duplex and houses. Some of the kids that were part of the tag game decided to hide in that meadow. The meadow had some unwanted junk there by people loitering. Two kids decided that they were gonna go hide in a pile of junk that consisted of some old furniture. There were two old couches over one another. When the kids got there, they thought of hiding between it. As they were trying to get in, one of the kids noticed someone already lying in there. The kids were already grown enough to know what was what, so they freaked and ran to tell the other kids. More kids came back to check it out, since there were some older kids there. The older ones decided to lift off the couch on top of the bottom one to check out who was lying. The younger ones stood watching. When they moved it, it was a dead corpse. I don't recall how old it was, but it was a dead corpse of a white lady. The news got to one to another, and eventually police showed up to the site. The girl was raped, then murdered and disposed there. Soon after, creepy shit started to happen around the apartments. Kids running back into the meadow from games would see a white lady in jeans and a white tank searching through the junk laying around. And when she spotted that the kids were looking at her, she would freak and eventually run to hide at the furniture that was at the same spot the corpse was found. People coming home late at night would notice that there was a white lady still wandering around the apartment's parking lot, sometimes crying. One night, a Hmong family in the apartments were having a movie night. The dad and the mom were pretty young and had 3 little children. The youngest one started to cry a lot. The mom was trying to calm the baby, but the baby still cried a lot. The mom then gave the baby to the dad to hold while she went to make a bottle. The father tried to calm the baby. Then, he noticed the baby keep staring the other way towards the living room window and then crying again, so he decided to look too. When he looked, he saw a lady standing outside the window. He freaked out and grabbed his children and told the wife to go to bed now, not telling the wife what he saw so she wouldn't be scared. In the middle of the night, someone began knocking on their door. The mom told the dad to go get it, but he kept insisting not to. The mom was getting irritated and told the husband that she would if he didn't. He then told her that let's just ignore it. I'll tell you tomorrow morning why, so that gave the wife a hint too. She got scared and went to sleep. The next morning, the dad explained to the mother he saw this and that at the window. But guess what? Their apartment was actually on the second floor. On the second floor, the living room window had no patio on the other side. It was just a straight drop down since the patio only goes and stops at the door. At Greystones, sometimes there is also security that drive through for their rounds. There was a Hong guy first night working as a security, and one of his rounds was at the Greystones. It was very late at night, and everyone was already in bed. The Hmong security did his round driving through. Since he finished a little quick, he decided to park his car and just rest a little bit. As he rested, Simone knocked on his window. He looked, and it was a white lady. She started saying stuff. As for him, his English was not too good since he was one of those who barely just got in the States. He stopped her and grabbed his phone or radio to call for an interpreter to get there. He let the lady sit inside the back seat as they waited, and he stood outside. When the other security got there, they walked over to the home security's car. No one was in the back seat. The Hmong guy got really confused. He swore that there was a lady in there. Eventually, the other security left. As the Hmong security thought everything through, he realized that there couldn't be anyone here at this late hour. So the next day, he eventually quit the security job. Yes, these stories are rumors from the apartments. So it's up to you if you want to believe it or not. But a lot of creepy shit had happened there at those apartments. Story 15. Expecting Father. Everyone knows that women get really emotional when they are pregnant, and sometimes they take it too far. Saying stupid things like, "If you don't love me, then I'm going to run away with the unborn baby, and you won't get to see us. Or I'm going to die with the baby, and you will see how hard it is." We men don't understand the hardship of bearing a child, but we do try our best to help out. Well, my wife learned that the hard way. When she was pregnant with our baby, she would rant about stuff. I would tell her to stop saying stupid things because the dead hears. She's not that religious, so she didn't care much. One night, she woke me up crying and shivering. I asked her what happened, and she said my deceased grandma came. As she was sleeping, she heard dragging footsteps coming from the hallway to our room. The door opened, and my grandma walked in and stood next to her bedside. Grandma said in a low and frail voice in Hmong, "I don't want the both of you to die," meaning her and the baby. Then Grandma fell on top of her belly and hugged the baby bump. Wife said she struggled for like 15 seconds until she broke free from the paralysis, and Grandma disappeared. At that time, I used to work late hours and would get home around 3 a.m. Everyone would be asleep at that time. So I would come home and turn on the TV or video games, play a game or two, and go to sleep. Every 3 to 5 nights when I got home, I would see a little girl about 2 years old in white run around and play. She'd run to the kitchen and disappear, run to the bathroom and disappear, and run to our room and disappear. I came out of the bathroom one time, and I almost ran into her as she ran across my path, turned the corner, and disappeared. Sometimes, I would hear her crying next to our bedroom door, or when I am taking a dump, she'll come and cry next to the door. Some nights I would be gaming, and I could see her at the corner of my eyes, just standing there, watching me game. The whole time these things that has been happening, I was the only one that could see her, or hear her. I asked everyone in the house, and they would shrug it off like I was crazy. Funny thing was, I was never scared when I see the little girl or hear her cry. Sometimes I would whisper softly, "Shh, don't cry," and the crying would stop. My wife and I wanted to do a surprise gender reveal at birth, so we never got an ultrasound taken, but I already knew the gender of my baby. A long 9 months later, after hearing and seeing a little girl run around and hearing her cry, my baby girl was born. After she was born, I stopped seeing and hearing the little girl every 3 to 5 nights. I saw her every night in her little crib, all cute and chunky. We went and had a boy a few years after, and yes, the same thing also happened. I would see a little boy around the age of 2 run around and cry for daddy until he was born too. Let me just say my experience through pregnancy as a father was like no other. Story 16. Haunting of South Sacramento, the spirit that loved my father. This happened to me and my family back when we were living in South Sacramento in the hood. My house was haunted by a ghost who liked my father. This particular being was very difficult to work with throughout. How long? We finally were free after we moved. My mom would always complain about her body aches and headaches. She will always put a lot of medicine on and got some rest. Every day, my mother wakes up at 3 a.m. to prepare lunch for my father to go to work. He starts at 5 a.m. My father wouldn't return from work until 3 p.m. I remembered this particular event because it scared the flip-flops off my feet, and my little brother ran under the table to hide. It was 2002, and I was 7 years old. My lil bro was 5. The PS2 just came out, and I was playing Dynasty Warriors for a while with my little bro. It was time for my mother's daily routine nap, so of course, she puts on medicine and goes to sleep. I'm pretty used to my mother's routine, so I knew she was in the bedroom asleep. After a bit, my mom screams from the top of her lungs, "Tigerbite," and I jumped so hard, turned my head, and nothing. I looked at my lil bro, and he already ran off. My mom was not in the living room. I had to stop and think, because I got jump scared and remembered my mom went to the bedroom to sleep. I rushed to the bedroom to see my mom, and what happened? My mom was rubbing her head really hard and was moaning from pain. I asked what happened, and she said something pulled my hair while I was sleeping and wouldn't let go. When I heard that, I didn't believe it because I was a kid. But I still helped my mom get up and try to soothe her pain anyhow. Later, I find a clump of her hair under the bed. I looked around under the bed. Nothing but shivers came down my spine. Later on, when my dad came back from work, my mom told him what happened. My dad thought she was making it up because she normally has migraines and body aches, but my mom insists that he hears her out, at least. Now, this part is the confirmation that the house was haunted. My mom told me everything when I was 18, and my family moved out of the house, finally. One morning, right before my mom woke up to make my dad lunch and breakfast, she felt something pulling her hair again. Just before it got worse, my mom grabbed the back of her hair, but instead of hair, it was a wrist. My mom instantly got up, and it disappeared. Now my mom is Chew, $3. She got up and quickly went to the kitchen and turned on the gas stove, grabbed a pan and oil. She went into the dry cabinet and grabbed a big ol' hand full of dried chili pepper. Very quickly, she fried those peppers, sizzling and popping loudly. She then thought it wasn't enough, so she took the chili oil from the cabinet and fried half the jar. I woke up because it stunk and hid under the blanket, as well as the brothers. I remember my dad getting up and going to the kitchen to turn off the stove, asking questions and saying it stinks. My mother says, within 5 seconds of silence, they both heard my dad's car door open and slam closed. Then the car alarm went off. They both checked the car, and they didn't see anything. Doors were still locked. Story 17. Don't invite them in. Names have been changed. So, as we already know, the Hmong generation nowadays can't really speak fluent Hmong or use the correct terminology for certain cases. In this case, it took place a couple of years ago when I was dating my girlfriend Shua. Shua and I decided to go to the movie theater one day. After we finished watching the movie, we walked out and headed toward the car. Now, by this time, it was getting dark already. On our way to the car, we bumped into Shua's friend Pa and her boyfriend Tang. She was talking to Pa about how the movie was, and that her and I were going to get something to eat before heading back home. Shua then asked, "How about you and Tang? Nebula of Moskov Tug? Where will two be going?" Pa replied, "Oh, Pebua must Tom Tang TZ's Abyssal. Oh, we will be going to Tang's house only." As females were, they talk for a bit. Here I am facing the other way, but still listen to what they were talking about. I then hear Pa say, "Okay, Pebmus, Lamos, we are leaving." Shua walked over and held my arm really tight. I asked Shua what was wrong. She said that after talking to Pa, when Pa turned around to leave, she saw a little boy about the age of 10 wearing nothing but a pair of dirty, blood-stained underwear with his arms around Pa's shoulder. It was like he was walking away with Pa and waving bye to Shua, smiling with stab marks all over his body. His face all bruised and broken. I realized that when Pa was talking to Shua, she kept saying Peb, 3 or more people, instead of you be 2 people, which is basically an unintentional invite for the little boy to follow her around. I went home that night. The next morning, I asked my grandmother about that situation, and she said that if you use the terms wrong, sometimes wandering spirits or demons who wants to be accepted and loved will think you are referring to or including them and will follow you home. Moral of the story, know your Hmong. Thank you for always supporting the channel and welcoming its videos. Wishing you good health, and remember to subscribe to the channel to achieve 1,000 subscriptions.